Alright, let's talk about this pretty ruddy good Green Lantern's comic book issue. This is Convergence's Green Lantern's corpse. I am not even going to waste time explaining Convergences. Just to let it be known that it was a crossover that wasn't very good, but it allowed for some very nice, short, 2-issue miniseries with ad versions of characters or teams. This one is Green Lanterns, and it is based on the 80s run by Steve Engeltine, the latter end of that run when Jordan Albert returned as Green Lanterns, and we had 3 Earth-based Green Lanterns. Little did we know back then that only 3 Earth-based Green Lanterns would seem like not many. I think this one is specifically placed at least after issue 207 when Gary Gardner comes back to Earth. He was under house arrest in space before then, and this story focuses on him. It really does do right by him too. I always felt that Steve Engeltine's transformation of Gary Gardner into the obnoxious arsehole was handled quite offensively. He just says he had brain damage, and that is why he has a drastic personality shift and becomes a total bellend forever. Considering it was also at the same time as Christmas on Infinite Earths came out, they really should have used the reboot to explain that Gary Gardner, this new version of Gary Gardner, he was always like that. Instead of Steve Engeltine using mental handicap as a justification. We do explore Gary Gardner's mental problems in this, though. Not enough that it excuses Steve Engeltine's scapegoating, but it does help ease the character's personality having a total rewrite. This is like between the two versions of the character. It feels like a bridge. It is shown some of what Gary Gardner was like before Steve Engeltine made him a wanker. And it is good to see. It is an attempt to acknowledge that blaming a coma or brain damage, it wasn't ever enough as an explanation for a total reset and recreation of our character acts. This is a therapy scene, but I wouldn't criticise this as Aki writing. Therapy scenes sometimes are a lousy means to have a character express stuff that the writers cannot articulate elsewhere. But this is a character who understandably would be in therapy, and while there is some exposition in there, it does feel more that the scene is about Gary Gardner's mental hang-ups and problems, rather than him telling the audience what his motivations and personality are. This story does star Gary Gardner as the lead, but both Jordan Albert and Alvin Stewart, they appear as well. I think it is important to talk about this creative team, and they are decent here, very solid. The writer and artist, they are not names you see much, and their work has been very niche and years between. In comic books, the other major thing that the writer has done is Darkstar and the Winter Guard for Marvel, a miniseries I quite enjoyed from 2010. He collaborated with the same artist on that too. Quite a quirky series, and it didn't sell very well, but its numbers would be respectable against today's sales. That is it for the writer though. No other work at Marvel or DC. I think he is primarily known for video games, or tabletop games, or anime, or something I am not interested in. The artist doesn't have a tremendously long list of credits either, but he has done fill-in art on stuff like Stephen Oakman, and the main thing I can think of is he was the artist on the Rocket Red series that I think even Marvel forgot they ever published. He also did, and this is bonkers, he did a licensed superhero comic based on Better Call Saul. All in all, they are a pretty promising creative team, and if there was any justice in the medium of comic books, they would have been given a shot at a more well-known title. Maybe something like Excellent Force or Galactical Guardians. If you are trying to align this with the actual issues from Steve Engletine's run, there is some dicey considerations and contradictions. I said I would place this around 207, but we have stuff like Gary Gardner saying he has never met Alvin Stewart. We have this stuff with Blake Lively. She was actually a proper bad guy at this point, driven to madness by her awful, abusive boyfriend, Jordan Albert. Then there is also the time span of Convergences itself to consider. These are pockets of reality that have been captured and imprisoned inside a dome for a year. So there's a lot of extra stuff to consider. I didn't really want to get into Convergences because it was disappointing as a story. But these little mini-series, they are enjoyable on their own, and you didn't really need to get bogged down with the plot of the crossover or understand what is happening in the larger scheme of things. Just have fun with two issues that maybe reunite or return to a period of comics that you liked. If you want my honest recommendations, I would say that the Captain Marbles, the real one, Biffy Baston, that one is the best of all of them. But there are plenty of other ones that are entertaining or decent. This one included Gary Gardner gans and visits both Alvin Stewart and Jordan Albert. None of them have their powers because the dome has cut off their connection to the power battery. I definitely should have mentioned that already. And then Gary Gardner and Jordan Albert, they come to blows, and Gary Gardner gets to lash out and deal with some of his resentment that he has for Jordan Albert. Then Convergence's stuff happens. And again, Jordan Albert is a dick and dismisses Gary Gardner and won't accept them as a Green Lanterns. But that isn't going to stop Gary Gardner from being a hero. Now, I already mentioned the iffy problems with when exactly this is meant to be taking place, where these characters have been plucked from. And I am gunning with this bit at the back here, which recaps events all the way up to at least 201. They even show this bit where Gary Gardner met Alvin Stewart. My point being, it is not a perfectly researched piece, but it definitely has some charm and quality. I have read part 2, but I didn't own it, so you shouldn't set your hopes on seeing me cover it, unless there is a huge demand for me to look at the other issue, but I don't think there will be. Maybe I can look at Dark Star and the Winter Guard instead. I think this is a 7 thumbs up.